I am the Decay Echo, and this is your invitation to witness the unfolding of a narrative that refuses to fade into the silence of oblivion, a narrative as eternal as the whispers of decay. Let the journey begin, and may your curiosity be as relentless as the march of time. Now, traveler, let's venture onward to discover myths, legends, facts, and forgotten history.
Dancing Plague of 1518.
In July 1518, residents of the city of Strasbourg, then part of the Holy Roman Empire, were struck by a sudden and seemingly uncontrollable urge to dance. The hysteria kicked off when a woman known as Frau Trophia stepped into the street and began to silently twist, twirl and shake. She kept up her solo dance-a-thon for nearly a week, and before long, some 36 other Strasbourgeois had joined in. By August, the dancing epidemic had claimed as many as 400 victims. With no other explanation for the phenomenon, local physicians blamed it on hot blood and suggested the afflicted simply gyrate the fever away. A stage was constructed and professional dancers were brought in. The town even hired a band to provide backing music, but it wasn't long before the marathon started to take its toll. Many dancers collapsed from sheer exhaustion. Some even died from strokes and heart attacks. The strange episode didn't end until September, when the dancers were whisked away to a mountaintop shrine to pray for absolution. The Strasbourg dancing plague might sound like the stuff of legend, but it's well documented in 16th-century historical records. It's also not the only known incident of its kind. Similar manias took place in Switzerland, Germany and Holland, though few were as large, or deadly, as the one triggered in 1518. What could have led people to dance themselves to death? According to historian John Waller, the explanation most likely concerns Saint Vitus, a Catholic saint who pious 16th-century Europeans believed had the power to curse people with a dancing plague. When combined with the horrors of disease and famine, both of which were tearing through Strasbourg in 1518, the Saint Vitus superstition may have triggered a stress-induced hysteria that took hold of much of the city. Other theories have suggested the dancers were members of a religious cult, or even that they accidentally ingested ergot, a toxic mold that grows on damp rye and produces spasms and hallucinations.
Axe murders of the DMZ.
On August 18, 1976, the Korean Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, witnessed a shocking escalation of hostilities when North Korean soldiers brutally killed 2 U.S. Army officers, Captain Arthur Boniface and Lieutenant Mark Barrett, with axes. The officers were conducting a routine operation to remove a poplar tree that obstructed visibility between checkpoints in the Joint Security Area, JSA. This unprovoked attack on American personnel in the highly tense DMZ area threatened to ignite a larger conflict. In a calculated response, the United States initiated Operation Paul Bunyan on August 21, 1976. This massive show of force aimed to address the incident while avoiding further violence. A convoy of heavily armed U.S. and South Korean troops, supported by tanks and aircraft, was mobilized to the site. Under intense scrutiny and with a formidable military presence, soldiers used chainsaws to fell the offending tree, while the perimeter was fortified to prevent any North Korean interference. Operation Paul Bunyan successfully removed the tree and sent a powerful message of deterrence without escalating the conflict. By demonstrating their resolve through a strategic display of force, the U.S. and South Korean forces reinforced their commitment to maintaining peace and order in one of the world's most heavily fortified and sensitive regions. The operation remains a striking example of how military precision and diplomatic restraint can coexist in addressing international tensions.
Whatever happened to USS Cyclops?
In March 1918, the USS Cyclops, the largest ship in the U.S. Navy at the time, set sail from the West Indies to Baltimore, loaded with 306 crew members and 11,000 tons of manganese ore crucial for the war effort. The Cyclops had weathered many voyages since its launch in 1910, but this journey would be its last. Despite a final message that all was well, weather fair, all well, the ship and everyone aboard vanished without a trace, disappearing somewhere within the enigmatic Bermuda Triangle. Theories about the Cyclops' fate are as vast as the ocean it crossed. Some suggest it fell victim to a German submarine, a plausible theory given the ship's strategic cargo and the ongoing World War. Others speculate that structural issues or a sudden mechanical failure might have doomed the vessel, while more imaginative minds point to supernatural forces. Yet, no distress signal was ever received, and despite exhaustive searches, not a single piece of the ship has ever been recovered. Over a century later, the disappearance of the USS Cyclops remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in naval history. The complete absence of wreckage and the eerie silence from the ship continue to puzzle historians and haunt the families of those lost. This story, filled with unanswered questions and deep historical significance, undeniably deserves a place in the National Archives, ensuring that the legacy of the Cyclops and its crew is never forgotten.
How did the artists Hall and Oates meet?
Daryl Hall and John Oates comprised the duo Hall and Oates, which was part and parcel of the American music scene in the 1970s and 80s. The two musicians' meet cute wasn't exactly cute, however. In fact, it was far more dramatic than anyone might expect. Both Hall and Oates grew up in Pennsylvania. Like so many kids from the area, they both ended up as undergraduates at Philadelphia's Temple University. They joined different music groups. Hall was part of the established Temp ones, while Oates joined the up-and-coming Masters, and both acts were scheduled to perform at Philadelphia's Adelphi Ballroom on the same night in 1967. Unfortunately, the show devolved into chaos when audience members began to fight in the venue. Hall later recalled the incident. There were chains and knives and shots rang out. Obviously, the show was over. We were on the upper floor and there was a lift down to the street, so I ran and jumped into it, and John Oates was in it too. I said, "Oh, well, you didn't get to go on, either. How you doing? You go to Temple University, I go to Temple University. See you later, bye." And that was it, that's how we met. Their paths continued to cross, and the pair became musical collaborators.
Jamaican police opened fire on this musician's plane.
Jimmy Buffett wasn't a musician famous for brushes with the law or a high-octane lifestyle. But in January 1996, his plane was on the receiving end of a barrage of bullets, and police officers were the ones shooting at him. He had just landed in Jamaica on his private plane, the Hemisphere Dancer, along with fellow musician Bono, Bono's wife and children, and Chris Blackwell, the founder of Island Records. Before anyone could exit, they were met with an unexpected, unwelcome surprise. Local police officers fired 7 shots at the plane, mistakenly assuming it was involved in smuggling drugs. Bono later described his feelings to the Belfast Telegraph. "These boys were shooting all over the place. I felt as if we were in the middle of a James Bond movie, only this was real. It was absolutely terrifying, and I honestly thought we were all going to die. Thank God we were safe and sound. My only concern was for their safety. It was very scary. You can't believe the relief I felt when I saw the kids were okay." For his part, Buffett didn't appear too shaken. In fact, he used the incident as fodder for his song, Jamaica Mistaica, and joked. "Like all things, it made for a good song. I know that there are times in my life where I probably should have been shot at for a lot worse behavior. But on this particular instance, I was innocent. Not even a spliff. Nobody was hurt, so I said, let's just get on with it. Some people said, God, you could have sued them, you could have sued the government. But I went, no, it's probably karma. We're even now. And so, our descent comes to a pause. But remember, the crypt holds secrets yet unspoken, a forgotten chronicle awaits, one that will twist our understanding of history even further. I am the Decay Echo, and until our next journey, let the whispers of the past guide you deeper into the shadows.